right, guys, we're coming to the mat and we're going to start in a seated position. So we're going to start sitting up nice and tall, nice flat back, with both knees bent and our feet flat to the mat. Sitting up nice and tall, nice and long, we're going to stretch the spine towards the ceiling. Pull the rib cage in so we don't overextend the spine. I want you to think about kind of stretching the spine, that coil up towards the ceiling nice and long. Dropping the shoulders down as you stretch your spine up and through. So we keep that length. And you can kind of feel those shoulder stabilizers, the muscles through your mid-back fire and engage as you sit up nice and tall, and then knit and stitch the rib cage together like you're cinching up a corset nice and tight. And then for the exhale, we're going to add a pelvic tilt. So exhale, hips tilt back. But I'm trying not to round through the shoulders, through the upper back. I want to keep that flat upper back. And then rock forward. We're sitting up, we're sitting tall. And then hips tilt back. I'm trying, again, not to move the shoulders back or the head back. This is really about the hips tilting and creating some flexion in the low back. If you need to stay out of flexion, say for osteoporosis or something like that, you could move into extension. Extension is great if you've got any bone density issues in your spine. Otherwise, keep a neutral spine and just work on that bracing and that knitting in of the abdominals if you need to stay away from both flexion and extension. We're going to work just a couple more. Chest stays open, collarbone is spreading wide. And we're knitting the ribs in, warming up the low back as we draw our belly to our back. And one more. Rolling the shoulders back and down, stretch the neck. We're going to inhale, flat back, lean back. Just a little support of the hands and the arms as needed. And then drawing in through your midline, we sit up and sit tall. Inhale, hinging at the hip, flat back, proud chest. And sitting up, stretching tall. Really pulling up through those lower abdominals, up through the pelvic floor to keep the pressure out of the hip flexors. One more hinge at the hip. And sitting long and tall. We're going to go back to those pelvic tilts. We're going to tilt the hips back, curl and sink back. Now this time we're going to curl back a little farther. So you could stay out of flexion and work just that hip hinge, curling back onto the back of the hips for that rounded spine, or staying in neutral in that flat back, and then either hinging up or curling and rolling up to that tall position. I'd like you to pick one or the other. We want to make sure that as we curl back, if we're going to work the articulation, work that C curve, that as we come up, we don't then add the extension to come back. We want to keep that curling of the spine, that zipping and drawing of the abdominals in as we curl up. So shoulders stack over the hips before we rise and sit nice and tall. Last one. And stretching the chest up towards the ceiling. We're going to take our feet, our legs into that butterfly stretch, and chest lifts. Rolling the shoulders back and down. Opening and expanding the chest, letting the collarbone spread wide, ribs and abs knit in. and then chin to chest, forward fold, rounding and rolling forward over the legs, rolling forward, and curl and restack. Sitting up nice and tall, nice and long. Last extension, shoulders roll back, chest lifts up. We want to target that extension right across the broad line at the mid-back to lift the chest up. You could even lift the chin, drop the head back to stretch the front of the neck. And slow to reset. Ribs knit in, and we stretch the spine nice and long. We'll unwind the legs. We're going to straighten the right leg out towards the end of your mat. Start with that even balance between the hips. You're sitting evenly from sit bone to sit bone, and arms come out to the front, and we're going to tilt the hips back. We're going to curl and roll back along the mat. Now you could work just that flat back hinge at the hip instead of rolling all the way down to the floor. Head and shoulders make contact with the mat. We're going to keep the hands and the arms right over the chest for the first few before taking the arms overhead. We don't want to over-activate the lats when we're flat on the mat. Nice smooth articulation along the spine. That right leg is stretching farther and longer. The straighter you have that right leg, the more locked out the knee is, the more power and support you have for the movement. Nice and smooth glide. Drawing the ribs and the abdominals in, and we fold and curl. Sitting up nice and tall. I'm going to reset my hips. We tend to get a little bit of that tuck, so we need to reset. Holding on to the left leg, we're going to lean back just a little bit. I'm going to add a bit more knee bend. We're going to bring our right leg to tabletop position. Right leg extends out and draws back to tabletop. If your right arm's in the way, you can reach that right arm out to the front. If you want to add some more challenge, bring that right hand back behind the head as the leg lengthens and reaches. Last two. And we'll drop the foot, sitting up, move into that butterfly stretch, roll forward or hinge forward over the legs. And we'll curl up and restack the back. Right knee is now bent with the foot on the mat. The left leg lengthens and extends out. We start in that tall position, evenly weighted on both hips. Arms come to the front. We tilt the hips back and we curl. Curling back to the floor. We're going to keep the arms stacked over the chest, reaching for the ceiling on that rollback, so we won't take the arms overhead just yet. And curling and rolling up. Sitting long, sitting tall. And again, you can avoid the flexion of the back, work just the hinge at the hip, leaning back with that flat back, proud chest. Left leg is stretching out farther and longer than before. You need that tension, building up the foot, up the leg, to the hip, for more support and more stability. One more. And we sit tall. Take a moment to adjust the hip position. We're going to sit up, sit tall. Using that right leg, we're going to hold on a little bit, lean back, flat back, proud chest. Bring the left leg to tabletop. And left leg straightens and draws back. Again, you could move this left arm out of the way if you don't need it for support or you need some more space. Reaching either out, or again, left hand could come behind the head for more challenge. And we extend and lengthen. Last two. Foot comes down to the mat, we sit tall, moving back into that final butterfly stretch for this progression, and we roll forward or hinge forward, flat back, and let the knees fall to the floor. One more breath. And then we curl and restack, sitting up nice and tall. I'm going to cross the ankles, sitting up tall on the sit bones. You could go to a straight leg or a bent knee if the cross-legged position is not comfortable for the hips or for the knee. Hands are going to come behind the head with fingers interlaced, stretching tall towards the ceiling. And we're going to twist through the mid-ribs to the right. And back to center. Chest, shoulders, head and neck twist to the left. And back to center. That nice smooth glide from side to side, rotating through the mid-ribs as you draw your belly to your back. And we're trying to sit taller and longer with each rotation, stretching up towards the ceiling. Last one to the left. And back to center. Arms come down by your side. We're going to straighten both legs out mat width apart for our forward stretch and reach. Legs are straight and fully engaged as we press them down against the mat. And the arms come forward. We move chin to chest and we forward fold, curling and rolling, stretching out nice and long over the legs. And curling up, restacking, sitting up nice and tall. You could go flat back, proud chest, hinging at the hip, either reaching with the arms or hands across the chest as you hinge to keep that length and that extension through the back and still stretching the legs. Trying not to over shrug the shoulders. Always resetting the shoulders as you sit back up nice and tall, sitting long. So they always drop down to reconnect down into the torso. One more forward fold and reach. If you can reach for your feet or towards your ankles, take hold with the hands and try to draw yourself forward deeper into that stretch as you press the back of the legs down. And curling up, slow to restack the back, sitting up nice and tall. We'll bring our legs together at the center, still dorsiflexed at the ankle. We'll bring our arms out to a T position and rotate to go palms up towards the ceiling, stretching out nice and long. We twist through the mid-ribs to the right and we double pulse for 1, 2. Coming back to center, we twist to the left and pulse 1, 2. Arms are spreading wide. So the hand closer to the legs does not come forward. Your arms are not crossing in front of the chest. Trying to sit up as tall and as long as we can. Feel that engagement in the mid-back, around the shoulder blades. One more, each side. And arms come to the front. We'll curl and roll forward. Stretch the back out over the legs. Letting the back of the legs stretch and decompress. And slow to restack. Sitting long, sitting tall. I'm going to point the toes, stretch the legs long. We need to have that tension in the legs for our next roll up. Starting in our tall seated position, we're either going to hinge back, flat back if you're avoiding flexion, or roll back. Just roll back as far as you can, knowing that you can come back up the same way you descended down to the mat. And this time we're going to reach the arms all the way up overhead, pull the rib cage down, draw the chest down into the body, and arms flow forward on that inhale as the head, neck, and chest begins to lift. And then exhale to scoop and curl, pressing and reaching long with the legs as you curl and roll back up. And we'll dive forward, stretching out nice and long over the legs, and curling back. Gliding the shoulders down, pulling them away from the neck, away from the ear, tilting the hips back, one piece, one vertebra at a time as you roll back to the floor. Be mindful of the rib cage, wanting to open up and expand. Inhale to begin that lift, and use that exhale to push the air out. Draw the abdominals in deeper. Stretch the legs straighter and longer as you curl and roll back up. Check in with the shoulders, pull them down away from the head, away from the ears. We'll go for one more roll up, curling and rolling up. And we're stretching out nice and long over the legs. And we'll curl up and restack, sitting up nice and tall. We're going to bend our knees, and we're going to hinge back. We're going to work into that teaser prep position, floating and holding. So extend the spine, sit tall, sit long, and then lean back. And when you're ready, bring one or both legs up to tabletop, and we float and hold. Into this prep position, roll the shoulders back and down. And hands come off the legs when you're ready. And we hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Hands come back to the legs, drop the feet down, sitting up nice and tall, nice and long. We're going to do 2 more sets of those holds. So roll the shoulders back, prep the position, hinge back at the hip, bring legs to tabletop. You're on your back pockets, evenly weighted across the hips. And then hands release if you're ready. And we hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hands return to the legs. We drop the feet. Sitting up, sitting tall. Stretch the back, open the chest. And one final hold. Leaning back, extending the spine, rocking back onto your sit bones, onto your pockets. We float the legs. We're going to brace and tighten through the abdominals. Find that zip from pubic bone up towards the chest. And then hands release. And we hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Hands down. Drop the feet. Let's butterfly stretch to open through the hip flexors, through the adductors, inner thighs. And we'll curl and restack. Sitting up nice and tall. We'll bend the knees, place the feet flat. We're going to curl down to the mat, go into some bridges. And we'll take our time to set our spine, get our torso all aligned, shoulder to shoulder, to the ribs, to the hips, nice and balanced. Knees are bent and feet are flat to the mat, just in line with your sit bones. And we're going to reach the arms nice and long. You can stay in a neutral spine, not adding any flexion to the low back, just that strict bridge, that strict lift of the hips up. Or add the articulation, that undulation and rolling of the spine on and off of the mat. On the exhale, we tilt the hips back. Create that hollowing. Drive through the heels. Lift the hips as you send the knees forward towards the toes, knitting the rib cage in. We squeeze through the glutes, press into the back of the legs, and next breath, we curl down along the spine, finding that nice smooth articulation along the back, returning to that neutral hip and low back position, and bridging again. Taking our time to slow down and feel how we're lifting up off of the mat, finding that balance and that symmetry from side to side. Nice and smooth articulations. And we'll work 2 more bridges. Last lift. And slow as we curl down. Legs come to tabletop. You can do this next one with or without the chest lift. We're going to move into that single leg stretch or single leg extension. Chest is lifted, hands are resting at the knees. Right leg reaches out as hands transfer to that left knee. And we switch. Add a pause before changing to the other side to ensure the leg is fully extended, locked out, stretching long. Nice smooth glide of the legs from side to side. Deep fold at the mid ribs for that big chest lift. Last one with that left leg. And draw the knees into the chest, roll back, reset head and neck. And head and neck looks to the right, over that right shoulder. Back to center, and head and neck looks left. And center. Resetting the low back, we'll bring our legs to tabletop with arms nice and long down by your side. So a little space between the knees, and we reach that right leg out and draw it back. Left leg reaches and back. I want to try to go lower each time. So we went forward at about that 45-degree angle, or maybe you were reaching up more towards the ceiling. We want to challenge the abdominals now. Try to reach a little bit lower towards the floor with each leg extension, without the hips tipping forward. We don't want to rock onto the tailbone. We want to keep that bracing. The straighter the leg gets, the lower it gets to the floor, the more tension we build in the abdominals. Working your way down to the floor if you can. Don't worry about modifying your range. If you need to stay up towards the ceiling or out at that 45-degree angle, that's perfectly fine. We'll slowly build up that core endurance and be able to work lower towards the mat. One more each side. And we'll rest the feet to the mat. We'll cross our right ankle over our left, go into our figure four stretch. I want to have that little gap at the small of the back. We pick that left leg up to tabletop and reach through. Slight little arch at the small of the back. Rotating that right leg out and away, moving the knee away from the shoulder as you're twisting the leg in the hip. One more breath. And we'll switch. Right foot drops. Left ankle crosses that right thigh. And we'll bring that right leg up to tabletop. Find that little arch at the small of the back. And twist the left leg away. Finding that nice glide of the leg and the hip as we twist and stretch. One more breath. And slow to unwind. Take a moment to reset. Legs come to tabletop. We're moving into our double leg stretch. Fold and lift, head, neck, and chest with hands resting at the knees. And on the inhale, legs together go forward as the arms move overhead. And then circle back, arms to tabletop legs. Inhale, open and reach. Pause to straighten and lengthen more. And then circle back. We want to keep that nice, proud chest. Fold deep at the midribs. Keep the chest lifted as the arms move overhead. One more. And knees tuck in. We roll back, rest the head and the neck. Head and neck looks right. And then left. Coming back to center. We'll take a moment to reset the position of our low back and our hips. And legs come to tabletop. We're going to go back to those double leg extensions, slowly working a little bit lower each rep towards the floor. So maybe you're starting at vertical. Maybe you're starting at 45. And we want to slowly start working towards the floor, a little bit lower with each extension. On the inhale, the legs lengthen long forward and draw back. Next rep, try to lower just a little bit more. And then a little more. We're drawing in tight through the belly, bracing through the back, through the abdominals. Squeezing the legs together, pressing them out nice and strong. Trying not to tip the hips forward. We don't want to weight the tailbone too much. Last 3. to the mat. We'll stretch that right leg out nice and long. Draw the left knee towards the chest. And we'll draw the left knee cross body. And we're going to twist through the mid-ribs to drop that left leg over to the right. Left arm opens out to a T position, and we turn and look out over that left shoulder, left arm. And slow to unwind. Left leg extends out nice and long. We bring that right knee in towards the chest, and then take the right leg crossbody over to the left, and that right arm will open out to a T. Look out over that right arm, right shoulder. And slow to unwind. We'll bend the knees, place the feet flat, do a couple little pelvic tilts just to decompress the low back. And then we'll set the feet and the legs, fingers will interlace. We'll bring our hands behind our head. And we're going to work into our chest lift with rotation. On the exhale, we fold deep at the mid-ribs to lift the head, neck, and chest. Chest and shoulders rotate over and onto that right shoulder blade towards the right underarm and back to center. And we twist over to the left. Moving through the mid-ribs from side to side. Nice and smooth transition. Letting the head fall back into your hands. And coming back to center, we'll bring legs to tabletop position, hold that strong connection at the inner thigh, and we'll twist through the mid-ribs. Rotating the upper body. Try not to over twist so we lose that connection of the hip to the mat. Last one to the left. And upper body resets to the mat. Trying to hold that strong tabletop position. We'll fold at the mid-ribs to lift the head, neck, and chest, and reset to the floor. Try not to pull the head and the neck forward. We want to let the head fall back and be fully supported by the hands and the arms as we draw the chest up and forward. Fold deep at the mid-ribs. Last two. And we'll rest the feet to the floor. Elbows flare out to the side. Let the chest open. Collarbone spreads wide. We pull the rib cage in together. Holding for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Unwinding and bringing the elbows back to that normal resting position. Not too flared out so the ribs don't open and flare, and not too folded forward. We're going to pull our head out of position over the shoulders. We'll fold at the mid-ribs to lift the head, neck, and chest. Bring the legs to tabletop. We're moving into crisscross. The right leg goes forward, upper body twist to the left. Pause for a breath to straighten that right leg more. And back to center. We switch. Twist to the right. Left leg goes out. It straightens more. And center. Twist. And back. Twisting through the mid-ribs from side to side, reaching longer with the leg each rep. One more each side. And we'll reset to the mat. Reach for the toes, reach for the feet, or grab the back of the legs. We're going to move out to that happy baby stretch with knees about shoulder width apart, and we're going to rock from hip to hip. Slow to unwind. We'll place the feet flat to the mat as we reset the upper body. Come back to that neutral spine position, and right leg comes to tabletop. We'll extend the leg up towards the ceiling. I have my hands on my hips just for that feedback to make sure that my spine and my pelvis isn't shifting as the leg comes down the center, circles out, back up and around to the top. I want to create that movement of the leg and the hip. Pressing down with the left foot, engaging the left leg for that stability as the right leg moves. And bending the right knee, placing the foot back to the mat. Take a breath to reset, and left leg straightens up towards the ceiling, and we reach down on the inhale, circling out and up on the exhale. Finding that rotation of the leg in the hip, and feeling the even weight between the right and the left hips connected to the mat. One more. And we'll bend the knee, rest the foot to the mat, reset. Both legs come to tabletop into that frog position. And we inhale to press the legs forward, squeezing through inner thighs. And draw the legs back, knees turn out, feet turn out towards the shoulders. And we press. Drawing the abdominals in, engaging the back extensors more. The farther forward the legs travel, and straighten. Remember that full extension of the leg. Find that pause. We don't want to just go half out and back in. Reach and lengthen. Fully engage the muscles in the legs as you press them forward. We go forward from frog, straight legs open, close, back to frog. The lower your legs are towards the mat, the more tension and torque it can put on the hips. So just be mindful that you're maintaining that nice neutral spine as the legs move. One more. And then we'll bend the knees and place the feet flat to the floor. Take a moment to reset. Maybe do a couple pelvic tilts to decompress and stretch the low back. And we'll find neutral. Right leg to tabletop, extending it up towards the ceiling. We press and anchor into that left side. The right leg rotates and moves out to the right, circles down and in, and exhale up through the center. Inhale to open and circle. Exhale to rise. keeping that little gap at the small of the back. Last two. And we bend the right knee, place the foot flat, take a breath, find your reset. And left leg to tabletop, stretching that leg up towards the ceiling, twist and inhale, circle out, down, into the center, and exhale up through the middle. Pressing strong into the right leg, down into the right foot for that stability. Try not to twist. And last one. We'll bend that left knee, place the foot back to the mat. Let's stretch the legs out nice and long across the floor. Arms reach up for the ceiling. We're working into our roll up, coming up to our seated position. We fold and curl. Curl and restack. We reach out, stretch out nice and long over the legs, stretching the back, stretching the legs. Curling up, curling and restacking, sitting up nice and tall, nice and long. Arms come up overhead. We reach up and over to the right. Back to center, stretch up and over to the left. One more each side. And arms rest. All right, guys. Great work today. Good job.